Yeah, that was operator error.
Elaine's here. All right. So we're on?
Yes.
Dave? Okay. So call to order. I'm going to ask, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I found my flag again. So pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So welcome to our January 26th, 2021 Tiverton School Committee meeting. Ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Dakotas? Mike, you might be on mute.
I am here.
Okay. I need your vote for the consent agenda.
Yeah, sorry, I got disconnected when I pulled in my driveway, Jerry. I apologize.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mrs. Palish?
Yes.
I vote yes, so consent agenda is approved. I'm going to ask for a motion to move up the special education presentation, which is item.
That motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
And do a roll call vote. Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mrs. Palish?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So we are on item, my consent won't load. All right. All right, so Dr. Sanchioni.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're on budget. Agenda item 5, old business. We're continuing our discussion on the FY22 budget. We have 3 presentations specifically relating to the budget that we presented to you in entirety. We're going to break out the special education request, the transportation request, and the technology request tonight. So we're going to start off with special education. I know Sarah has put together a lot of data and a lot of interesting information for you to preview. She has a team with her today, so I'm going to turn it to you, Sarah. You can introduce your team and take it from here.
Great, thank you so much. And it's a pleasure seeing everybody. Mr. Dakotas, I have not been in a meeting since you joined the team, so congrats, and it's nice to have you here.
Oh, thank you very much, Sarah. I appreciate it. It's good to be here.
Like Dr. Sanchioni said, I do have a team from Tiverton Middle School. Last year at this time when I was presenting the budget, I talked about a new program we would be instituting at Tiverton Middle School. We had the Bradley Partnership at Tiverton Middle School for several years. And when Ms. Craven came on and her team of Deirdre Gouch and Mary Serber, our assistant director, they really felt like we could take the program on and do it successfully. And in doing so, save some money with added district placement dollars. So we hired a stellar team who has been able to do just that, implement it with success. So we have Shannon Gray, the head teacher of the classroom, joining us. A big part of the program is the social emotional learning piece. So Elizabeth Barron is our school psychologist at Tiverton Middle School. And we did add, because of the program, the 2 more days of the psychologist, 0.4, as part of our budget last year. So Liz is there each day. And Deirdre Gouch is our special ed coordinator. Deirdre is on the call, yes. And then Sue Craven and Mary are here to present as well. So thank you all for joining. I'm going to start out with my presentation, and just about midway through, I'm going to have the Tiverton Middle School team hop on. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, looks like you all can see this. Okay, great, thank you. So some of this you have seen in previous years. I just think it's important to show a lot of this information because it really tells the story behind the numbers, and special education certainly has a lengthy story with it. So as much as I love to talk about special education, I'll try and keep it brief and short, but it's hard to keep me brief and short when I'm talking about this stuff because I am passionate about it. With that said, when we look at developing the budget, we certainly look at our guiding principles. So the law, the IDEA, we have to ensure that there's a free, appropriate public education for our students. Last year, you may recall me also saying that we are starting to work with kids. We used to work with kids and young adults ages 3 to 21. Rhode Island has adopted an additional year of services up until the age of 22 for those who require that level of service. In addition to that, of course, we support what the program, Tiverton Public Schools goals are, and we try to align our goals with theirs, including the social emotional services. All of our goals in the students' IEPs, we work towards closing that gap for all of the students, pre-K to 12, and then transition services. And perhaps most importantly, we do that in partnership with our families. So our known factors going into the budget probably sounds a little bit like Dr. Sanchioni's, our personnel and contract commitments. That's most of our budget. In addition to that, we look at our enrollment in our 3 towns, enrollment both regular ed and special education enrollment. Of course, there's state and federal mandates. We do get some revenue from tuition as part of the budget that we'll review. And of course, our identified populations of students, which is about 17%, which is it was last year as well. And when I look at that identified population, I do have the census count there from December. There's 3 years of census data, and we've really stayed pretty steady in regards to the number of students eligible for services. I put all of the disability categories on this slide. There are some that do not have numbers, and that's because they are either, they're probably less than 10, 0 to 10. And in some of those cases, we just don't put those numbers because it is some identifying information. But you can see the categories there where most of our students fall into. There was a bit of an increase this year with students with developmental disabilities. That is a number. If any of these numbers were to go up, that's a good one because that means we're finding the kids when they're young and getting the services in place as young as we can. And our hopes is to get those specialized instruction in place and then hopefully have them move out of services. So that's students who are in that category under developmental delay is anywhere through ages 3 through 9. And then at age 9, we would do a reevaluation if we feel like students are still eligible, and then students would fall into another disability category at that point. One of the new slides that we put in here is just the special education per pupil cost. And this is really used when students who are DCYF placed go into a residential treatment facility, for example, and the district has to pay their educational component. That's really when this number is used. But what we wanted to show you tonight is that we're trying to, that number is pretty low relative to some of the other communities in the state. That number comes from a pretty complicated formula. It does look at the budget and then looks at students who are eligible for services. And it's not head count, it's actually service count. So it is a little bit complicated. It's the last, FY18 is a little bit old data, but it is the last one we have gotten from the Department of Education. They're actually looking at changing that formula because it is so complicated and sometimes not a full true representation. So they are looking at changing that. But I think it is an interesting piece of data to use for the presentation.
Sarah, is it okay if we break in and ask questions during the presentation?
Yes, whenever, please.
So that 53,978, my recollection is that that's actually gone up a fair amount percentage-wise over the last 5 to 10 years.
In FY17, I have the number from FY17, it was 50,000. So it went up 3,000 in the year. I don't have the previous years with me.
Dr. Larkin,
Larkin?
I did go out to RIDE's website, and it actually has remained fairly stable over the last 5 years with an average of 52.6 over the last 5 for Tiverton.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Go ahead.
And can I ask, go ahead, Jerry, were you all set?
Oh, no,
Can I
yeah,
go
I'm
back
okay.
to that?
Yes.
Do we just pick those communities just because they're sort of East Bay-ish?
Yeah, we looked at East Bay, and then we tried to just pick some that are somewhat similar to Tiverton, but yeah, mostly East Bay. And then the South Kingstown we used because that is not the highest, but it's one of the highest. So you can just see how high that per pupil cost does get.
Because I just wonder, and I mean, certainly this is great, but I just wonder, I mean, depending upon how many, children you have in your program, you're gonna see economies of scale that we may not be seeing type of thing. I don't know how that's probably easier to do with per pupil because you could do ADN, maybe it's not as easy here, but I'm just wondering if we're smaller than some other districts, for instance, they may see economies of scale that, we just can't achieve. But this is a good view of certainly the East Bay.
Yeah.
I think
And East
demographically,
Greenwich is actually not, sorry, Dr. Larkin, East Greenwich is not on this slide, but they're actually the highest, and they're a rather small district. So that's why that formula, it is complicated the way they have that. But
Gotcha.
I was just going to say demographically, the best comparators for us have always been Bristol, Warren, and Middletown.
Yeah.
Because they look a lot like us size-wise, and they look a lot like us socioeconomically. Notably, their tax base is very different, which I think sort of speaks to some of the other comparisons that sometimes get made.
Can I ask a question, Sarah? It does appear that we do run quite a few $1,000s less than Middletown on a regular basis. Is that because of the makeup of their students receiving services? In other words, they would have proportionately more children requiring more intensive service?
They do have a higher population of students receiving services. And their population, regular ed and special ed, is just, a little bit higher than Tiverton.
But their per pupil averages about 6,000 a year more than ours. I'm not questioning it. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, it could be the intensity of the services, and but it could be from that. And they do have a little bit of a higher population of the military families that come there for 1 to 3 years, and they are a base that bring in families with multiple disabilities.
It's called the compassionate base.
Thank you, the compassionate base. So there are a few compassionate bases where families move to when they have students with complex disabilities, and Middletowns or Newports is one of those.
Yeah, that's understandable. And just one more, and I'll let it go. Obviously 2018 is not only stale, but moldy. When would we be expecting something more recent to actually have a handle on it? Can we be assured that our per pupil is still around $54,000 right now?
Yeah, like I said, it depends on if they decide to use a new model or a new formula. I actually called somewhat recently because of another issue with the DCYF, and I was asking just that, which actually precipitated us putting this into the presentation itself. So they did not give me an answer when they're going to get that to us.
I don't know how they could possibly expect districts to be making any kind of decisions on such old data, but thank you for sharing it anyway.
So, Sarah, can I go back to one thing you just said? So you said that the Naval Base over on Aquidneck is a compassionate base, so that is a designated base for families who have higher needs students. Is that how that works?
Yes, exactly. So San Diego, so oftentimes we will get IEPs and families that move from the San Diego area or Virginia Beach area, also to other compassionate bases.
And does the
Impact aid, there is some impact aid that goes along with that.
Okay, so I guess so that's sort of a compliment, I suppose, but could be worrisome for the people that have to write the budget. So we don't have a lot, I'm sure, as proportionally as many as maybe Middletown. We have military families in Tiverton as well. I've never even thought about that aspect of it, but probably I would guess the numbers are too small, but is there a way of calculating?
We do see more families moving out to Tiverton whose parents work at that military base.
Yeah.
Certainly in Newport and Middletown, there's more because it's just closer, but we are certainly seeing more families move out to Tiverton. But we could get you what that number looks like, sure.
And we don't get any of that additional aid, I suppose.
That impact, those impact dollars.
Yeah.
No, Peter and Amy, I don't believe you guys do.
We do not.
And does that actually then cover the cost of the district in terms of Middletown's experience?
No.
Yeah, I might have expected that, I guess. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Moving on from that identified population. So again, specialized instruction, that's specially designed instruction that is designed to meet the needs of the student. So all of those eligibility categories that we saw in the previous slide, we develop IEP goals and specialized instruction to ensure free, appropriate public education. And the IEP would be developed, and we develop that for the least restrictive environment. When we call least restrictive environment, it always starts out with the least amount of services. So that may be a consultation or related service, like a speech and language service. And then increasing from that would be specialized instruction in the regular classroom, and any sort of instruction that can be speech and language, education, some sort of occupational therapy or physical therapy services. All of those can happen in the regular classroom. When we're not seeing the progress made, that may be a time where we move that specialized instruction outside of the regular classroom. And that can be just for 30 minutes or 45 minutes a day to a student spending most of their day outside of the regular classroom. And then if that is not meeting the student's needs is when we look, time we may look at it out of district placement. And then finally, the most restrictive is a homebound or hospitalized placement. We do receive IEPs from students out of district or out of state who come to us with an out of district placement already part of their IEP. We are bound to that IEP and the service outlined in the IEP. We always review how the student is doing, whether it's in one of our schools or out of district. And based on all of the current data, we would make changes to the service based on that. Like I said, when students are eligible, we start out with evaluation. So anybody who has an IEP has had an evaluation of some kind, in addition to what is happening in the regular classroom. And we use that information to then determine what the child is eligible for and what services they have. So the blue area there is any kind of service an IEP may have, one or a combination of those there. Once a student turns 14, we start to look at transition services for students. 14 sounds pretty young, but we do start to really work with students and families to think about life after school. Students from 18 to 22 who require additional services, that's really when we go into more of the vocational, independent living, and community participation. That picture that's there is our transition program that we began 3 or 4 years ago now. And they're obviously practicing some independent living skills there. And then I talked a little bit there about our continuum of supports and our out-of-district data. I have here the out-of-district data. I use just the June each year when I put this graph together. So you can see there that the number of students have stayed pretty much the same, or the students who are receiving their services out of district. There is an increase in cost. Of course, there is just about a 2% increase in the tuition each year for these out-of-district placements. Another reason for an increase in cost could be just the rate of the students. Some students actually need really intensive services, even in that out-of-district placement, which is already an intensive service. So that could be a cause for the increase too. Right now, we're about 40 students out of district. At this point, it was as of January 26th, 2021, out of district.
So Sarah, this is about a 59% increase in, as you said, in like, you know, from FY16 to FY20. So, you know, it wouldn't be just, you know, 2% a year. So what we've seen is more intensive services over that period of time.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And intensive service it looks a little bit different too. I mean, the number increases with each of them, but it could be even a smaller classroom. So usually they're classrooms of about 10 to 12 kids. If there's an more intensive program, it could be a classroom of 5 students, or it could be even a one-on-one at one of those settings. So that is what could increase that time, in addition to additional services throughout the summer.
And I know sort of in my 10 years here, you don't see it going back the other way much. No, okay.
You know what we do see? We're meeting more of our services, and you'll hear a little bit about the program at Tiverton Middle School. We are servicing even more intensive students within our buildings. So the intensity of services we're meeting more of those students' needs in our buildings. So the students who do go out of district really are at a level of clinical or therapeutic supports.
And that may even be where you see sort of this flattening that, yes, there's still, you know, those 40 or so students, but it's sort of flat because we're able to bring, which obviously is always the goal.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
And Sarah, I think it's important to say that we are in close communication with the out-of-district placements, and we're always talking about ways that we can bring students back into the district. We are, aware of what's going on, who's doing well, and plans to move forward to bring the students back into the district.
So, for anyone from the public and for historical sense, I think this is probably the most important budgetary slide we actually have. And the fact of the matter is, my experience was that between 2012 and 2016, we actually did get some control over costs by bringing more services into the district. And that was, I think, very good for the students. And our costs did not go up as rapidly. But I think that, $900,000 or, close to $1 million increase from 2015 to 2016, from 2015-16 to 2019-20 really has had a big impact on our budgeting process. And none of this can ever catch up. In fact, last year was the first year we were able to not budget for it, but we had to eat those deficits over those years because those weren't budgeted out of the fund balance, which is sort of what it was for, and the IDEA money, which is what it's for. But because of the unique budget process, not just of Tiverton, but Rhode Island in general, you cannot catch up with these numbers when they start to rise. At least not within, a even 2 fiscal years. I don't know if Diane and Deb or others have other thoughts about that, but that has been my impression of this whole process.
I think, Dr. Larkin, that's where there's been so much discussion at the state level to try to come up with some sort of formula, some sort of aid to come from the states, because the burden does fall. It needs to fall on someone, but more often than not, it falls on the taxpayers.
Right, and it's statutory. It is absolutely appropriate to, and it's an imperative to provide these services. I do not in any way want to be misunderstood about that. It is very important, but accounting for the costs is really a financing nightmare.
I know.
Is there any continued discussion at the legislative level this year to try to bring districts some relief for this very expense?
There was a lot of talk earlier in the year when the election was happening. It is not happening so much right now. But I know that there are a group of legislators that have continually brought this up. Louis DePalma was one of our meetings quite recently, and he is always one of the legislators trying to bring this topic up and how.
He's a great advocate.
No,
He really
great.
is. Yeah.
We'll keep pushing.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yes, please.
I know, and I know you have this further in your presentation, but rather than go backwards at that point, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. I know that we have, and you have your team with you to talk about the program at the middle school, right? That's brought some more intensive services in-house. And I think I did hear you say that's kept us from having to send a certain number of students out of district. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
So had we not had that program, how many students would we be looking at right now instead of 42?
An additional 8.
So we would have gone from 42 to 50 in the last fiscal year. Is that correct?
Correct.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I am getting to that slide too. Just personnel organization sheet. I do have the regional side of the personnel. You can see that it's all of the administrators, myself and Mary, our central office staff, early childhood coordinator, and then we have our school psychologists, social workers, and speech pathologists, as well as the adaptive PE teacher. Most of those people are assigned to our school psychologists, social workers, and speech pathologists are either assigned to a building or a town. We have one of our social workers that works in both Little Compton and at Pecasset. That just splits between 2 towns, but we really try and keep them within one community so they become part of that community, part of their professional development activities, initiatives, and goals. We do swap sometimes if there is a specialty area that one of our folks have more expertise in, and they may come and consult with other teams throughout the region. I think I brag about that all the time because that is one of my favorite parts of being part of the regional program, is that and our specialized programs. In Tiverton, we have 25 special ed teachers this year. We are not looking at increasing next year. As well as teacher assistants. We're at 37.6. We are not looking at increasing that. We are not bringing on any new programs this year. We're going to continue to establish and grow the programs that we have in place.
Do you remember off the top of your head, either Peter or Sarah, how many special ed teacher assistants and teachers did we lose last year?
Teachers 1, I believe, and teacher assistants was at 5, Dr. Sankey?
I remember the number was large.
5.
That was
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, it was 5 assistants.
Thank you.
And then here are our regional programs. We split it up into our preschool programs, AM and PM. All of those are integrated programs. So we have students with IEPs and peer models, except for the intensive preschool program at Ranger. That is just an intensive program for students with special needs. After preschool, the students that require some intensive services, we have an intensive kindergarten program at Ranger. And then it moves to a grade 1 and 2 at Fort Barton. And then we kind of switch the name to alternate assessment because we look at students who qualify for alternate assessment, may need or are receiving a modified sort of curriculum. And most of their time is spent within that smaller class. There are certainly times where they're in the regular classroom when it's meaningful and supportive. So that we have throughout the years the students are in school who require that. Therapeutic Learning Classroom is our new program. You're going to hear a little bit about that in a second. Our behavior support programs, I remember starting these and talking about them and how excited we are. And we started with one, and we are here today with 5 behavior support programs, grades 1 through 8. We are servicing the kids.
Sarah, I just want to say that we've had that program, was my very, very first year of teaching. And since 2006, that was when we started our behavior support program.
That's right, Deirdre, I remember that. We are servicing the kids in high school and the behaviors that require those needs a little bit differently. But as we grow that program into 7th and 8th grade, that would probably be our next program that we do implement, would be a high school behavior support program. And we have our Project Search program at Newport Hospital. This is actually a program where we are receiving some tuitions as well from different communities in the state. You'll see that in the slide. And then our transition program that we started just a couple years ago for students 18 to 22. And I know the team has been holding on for a little bit, so I am going to stop sharing my, oh, hold on. Oh, you know what? I'll stop here. I'll stop and then come back to that and our team can present theirs. So again, thank you for joining us. And Sue, you can go ahead and start.
Yeah, if I can interject, we spoke with Shannon today, and Mary and I are going to let Shannon steal the show this evening. It's a short presentation, so we thought it would be more effective if it came from her.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Let's see. Everybody can see that all right, correct? Oh, I can't see anybody.
Not yet, I don't think.
Okay. It says it's presenting. Dave, do I have present options?
Dave, does she need permission?
You have permission to share your screen.
I did. Let's try this again. You'd think since I do this all day, I'd be better at it. Oh, this will do it. Sorry about that. Okay, by that one.
There you go.
Okay. So, as I've been introduced, my name is Shannon Gray, and I am the classroom teacher in the Therapeutic Learning Classroom, or the TLC, at Tiverton Middle School. And I just love this quote. If a child can't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. And that's kind of the basis of the program, is finding the way that our students best learn and meeting them there. So my classroom does provide children who are not successful in the regular education environment with that opportunity to grow and develop in a highly supported, multi-sensory school environment. We have behavioral and social coaching throughout every aspect of their day. They go to co-curriculars with support. They go to lunch with support. There's social emotional skills instruction. We have Liz Barron come in and do a social skills group once a week. If an incident comes up during the day, you know, because we have a fair number of staff with a low number of students, we're able to take that time to kind of talk with the student about what happened and kind of how to avoid that in the future, and maybe some of the different coping skills they could have used. I speak frequently with my families. There's a great homeschool collaboration via email, text, phone calls. Sensory tools are available to my students all day long. The region does a really great job of making sure I have all the tools that we need in the classroom. I also have the benefit of a small room right next door to me. So we have an alternative workspace. It's a little darker, it's a little smaller, more comfortable for the students. They don't have to necessarily be in front of all their classmates and making some of the mistakes they're making. They can take those academic risks. There's access all day long to the trained teacher assistants, individualized academic support. We have an incentive program. So on Friday afternoons, students who have met all of their academic expectations during the week can spend their behavior points in a school store, which is filled with things that the students have asked for. I actually just got another Amazon delivery from a family member of mine who decided we needed some new stuff. It's a therapeutic and calming atmosphere. I have light covers. There's a variety of seating, which I think you'll see in one of the slides. You know, students aren't necessarily asked to stay in that traditional desk, although we are still keeping our 6 feet apart. And we have mental health support available to us all day. You know, I can call anybody in the building. I can call Mrs. Gouch, I can call Miss Craven, I can call our school nurse, Mr. Mello, Miss Barron will come in. Anybody who is available will come in and support any one of my students, which is a really great benefit of the program.
Did we lose her?
One parent said, "We are so grateful for the supportive atmosphere and organization of the classroom. My daughter is making progress academically and her confidence in her own abilities is increasing." One of my students said, "The helper teachers are cool. Also, the
Shannon, you're in and out.
problems can really make that even scarier." And then this last quote, I have to say, was my biggest surprise and also my biggest achievement. "The class has done wonders with my child, not only on a behavioral level, but also with his academics. It truly has been a huge help for him and is a great class, and I'm glad the middle school has provided him with the opportunity to be in this classroom." That really warmed my heart to read. In this one, you can see some of the bungee chairs. Then these are the new chairs that we have that allow the students to kind of move while they're learning. TLC also consults school-wide with teachers, staff, and families on issues related to the social, emotional, and behavioral functioning at school. So it's kind of a building-wide support program. And so the whole TMS community is able to benefit from this program. And so I did not make the slideshow, but here are some of our fun Fridays. So we have dress up days on Fridays, and I like a theme, so there's me. So
Thank you.
that is my program in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have any questions, Shannon, but I love TLC. That's a great acronym for what you guys are doing. I love that.
That's all Shannon. She came up with that. We were trying to think of a name. I also wanted to say that, you know, when we meet with parents of students in our TLC classroom at meetings, I have asked them about their experience with our transition. And it's so nice to
She froze.
Technology.
Yeah.
I would say, I think I know where she was heading, so I'll kind of finish her sentence. I think what we're hearing from families is that it's been a very smooth transition from the Bradley program that was at TMS, that they haven't noticed any kind of, regression with their kids or any kind of difficulty managing that transition. So it's been smooth and effective and really all positive feedback we're getting from families.
Okay.
Dr. Larkin?
Yep.
I do want to congratulate you all for putting this together for the middle school. I can see that the parents are so appreciative. The kids are making some great progress, both academically and socially. And I would love at some point to come see your classroom when it's allowed once again. The question I have is there any integration with these kids in any of the regular classes?
Yeah, Sue, you want to talk about that? Sue Craven?
Sure. Yes, there is integration right now. I mean, we are limited this year because her program is grades 5 through 8. And because of the schedule we were locked into for a 5, 6, 7, 8 hybrid schedule, it kind of, made things a little bit crazy. However, almost all, I believe all of her students go into ELA and mathematics throughout the day.
So all of my students attend co-curriculars every day. They go to health and gym, STEM, art, and music. They also virtually attend a science grade level every day.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. So, Sarah, you guys are done with your presentation. Is that correct?
We are done with that part. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you all for joining. You're more than welcome to stay, but you can, it's late. We understand that. So thank you for coming and sharing the success of the program.
Okay. I just wanted to open up the floor a little bit more formally to any questions that any other the committees have, or any other committee members have. So, Mr. Dakotas, any questions?
I don't know if I have any questions. I want to say great job to Shannon and Deidre, Liz, and Sarah, of course. So me being new to this, I appreciate the presentations. I love the pictures. I don't know who put that slide together, but I thought it was great. Little FYI for the Newport people here, I was in a behavior disorder classroom when I started my career at Rogers High School. So I know a little about inclusion. I know about working in challenging environments. So I'm just eager to keep seeing and learning and hearing. So thanks for bringing that to us. It was really impactful. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mrs. Pavo, any questions or observations?
I have no questions. The only comment I have is that it is a wonderful program, and I think it gets stronger and better every year. I think everyone's working so hard to try to keep as many kids included as they can. I think that they're doing a wonderful job. Thank you very much for all your hard work.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Palish, anything else? Deb?
No, I'm all set.
Okay. And Mrs. Farnworth?
It's certainly not about the TLC program. Thank you again for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.
And any questions from any of our administrators?
And Jerry, I didn't mean to forget Mr. Serber. Sorry.
I'm sorry?
I just wanted to say I'm sorry I listed everyone. I forgot to mention Mary. Sorry.
Oh, all right. And any questions from the public, Ms. Delcourt?
Just a good evening from Miss Sally Black.
Hi, Sally. We knew you'd be watching. All right. Thank you. And again, Sarah and everybody, thank you again very much for your time and work and the presentation this evening.
Jerry, I've got a few more slides of mine.
Sure. Absolutely. Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you for letting us move up on the agenda. I have to go do bedtime.
Yeah, you're all set. Thank you, Shannon. I appreciate it. Thanks, Liz. Thank you, Deirdre.
Okay. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Just gonna get my screen up again. And Amy and Dave, I will try and get through this quickly here so you guys are up. So one of the slides I was going to present prior to Tiverton Middle School going, but it makes no difference. This is, Diane, I think you were touching on this a little bit before, when we talk about, right, not only is it best practice for the kids, for them to be in our school and us to take a program like this on ourselves, it is also a fiscal success. So I want to put this in here. I did this last year. I wanted to show you again this year. So when we start one of those regional programs, that long list I showed you on the previous screen, I want to show the cost of the program. So I grabbed 3 of them, one being our TLC, that specialized program at Tiverton Middle School in the middle there. I also grabbed a behavior support program at Gaudet and then one at Picasset. You can see how it's staffed and then what the total cost of a program is. And that is, if it were, if it were in one district, that top one there, it would be $195,000 about for the cost of the program. Since Tiverton is 41.2% of that specialized program, their part of that program is $80,340. And then you can see the other 2 programs. So that's just bringing that in-house. But here's where you can see where that total savings of having these programs in our district schools. So I use the same programs, and if you look at what it would cost to send a student out of district, and then having it in our schools, how we are saving. So, whether it's $89,000 or $316,000, it's a lot of savings for a community. So that's just 3 of the all of the specialized programs I showed you. So it's exciting to hear what's happening in our program. You got to hear from parents through that presentation, from the teachers, and now you see what the fiscal side is. So a win-win for all. So budget summary, our regional service, I've already talked about that, but that's a lot of services from regional staff, part of the budget. So that's part of the big part of the budget. Contracted and purchase services are some of the other therapies that occur in our schools and for our services. The other part of the budget is the supplies, materials, and miscellaneous. And that actually is that picture is one of the our other specialized classroom at Tiverton Middle School. Oops. So I talked a little bit about revenue from tuition. This is Tiverton's share of what we project for next year. We have some tuition from administrative claiming. The preschool tuition comes from our peer models in those classrooms. Our project search tuition is going up. We already have 4 applications from other towns, from Exeter, West Greenwich to Barrington. So that's a nice tuition for us. So it looks there that the total the total revenue in that is just about $112,000 for our projected budget.
Before you move on, Sarah, what is administrative claiming?
That's part of Medicaid, actually, Medicaid dollars that we get for that.
Thank you.
Sure. And that picture is our project search program at Newport Hospital. So those are our interns there. So then breaking down the budget for you all again, so now you know the story, and here is the budget. Salary and benefits are the biggest part of the budget. Then we have that contracted services, about $100,000, and then the supplies, service, and miscellaneous. Just trying to. Oops. Last year's total was, if you looked at that, $13,290,000. So it is down somewhat, and that is really just based on some salaries and benefits. We added some staff last year because of the new programs. We're not adding any staff, so that's why you see a little bit of a decrease there. So if I break that regional budget, right, that's the big regional budget, break it up into the Tiverton share. So the Tiverton share is about 41.2% of the budget. And that comes down to that 5,300,000, about 310. So then we reduce that by that anticipated revenue that I went over. And then we reduce it again by that local payroll. So those teachers and teacher assistants on the slide that was shown. And then finally, the district share to the region is just about $1,430,000. Last year, do I have the district share last year? Hold on one second. Oh, I don't have that.
It's on the next slide, Sarah.
Is it on the next slide? Okay, thank you. So then I'm just trying to break it down as easy as I can. The local payroll, the total program cost is $5,197,000, and it is a decrease of 4.2%. And then when we look at the total assessment, you can see there, thank you, where that total is and what the total looks like of the 5-year historical annual assessment.
So Sarah, on this slide, we're kind of seeing the opposite. We're seeing like a 25% decrease over that span, about 475,000, but the biggest is in FY21 and FY22. Is that reduction of people that we saw, or
yes,
no?
That's what that was.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions?
So there was one question, not about this part of the presentation, Sarah, but about the prior, about the TLC at the middle school. And the question from the public was, is that program going to be extended to the other schools? I assume the high school and the elementary schools.
So we do have some of those programming options already at the elementary schools. We don't call it TLC, but they are receiving some of those services in either our behavior support program or the alternate assessment program. I see Suzette shaking her head yes, and I'm sure Amy would as well. So they already are receiving some of those programs. We just don't have them all together because they're three elementary schools. And then the high school, Dr. Larkin, that would, like I said, that's where we anticipate our next program would be a high school program similar to that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the public at this point, Ms. Delcourt?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin. There is a 20-second delay, so it could come in 20 seconds later.
Okay, feel free to break in if something does come in while I open the floor to other questions. So I'll open the floor to the committee. Mrs. Pavo?
Nothing, Dr. Larkin.
Thank you. Mr. Dakotas?
No, thank you, though.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Sarah, my question is about this current year's Medicaid reimbursement. If you're not prepared to speak to that tonight, just tell me. But we've seen a significant decline this current fiscal year in Medicaid reimbursements, and I just was interested in hearing your thoughts on that.
Yeah, some of the services that we were usually able to receive because of COVID, we weren't. So our OT and PT services, while we were on virtual learning from March to June, and then even in the summer, although students received activities to do, some students weren't receiving the direct OT and PT, even virtually. A lot of families were just overwhelmed with the number of virtual sessions they had to go on, and instead asked us to just provide some activities they could do at home. So we weren't able to log those direct services, Diane. for Medicaid. And I think that's why we're seeing that decrease.
So at this point, I understand we still have some students doing distance learning. Are we going to just continue to expect lower levels for the rest of this school year?
No, so we are, it's not as many students who are receiving distance learning, and because distance learning has gotten better in all areas, families are a little bit, are able to receive those direct services now, even if it's done virtually. So our expectation is those dollars will go up.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Palish?
Sarah, I just want to say, first of all, we appreciate these presentations so much. I know this is what year it is that you've come, but these are very, very helpful in helping not only educate us, but educate the public. So thank you so much. I know it is what it is, but the teacher and the 5 assistants you lost, are you making that work? Has that been a struggle?
No, I think we're making, so the teacher was at Tiverton High School, and we are servicing students. All of the IEPs are being met at Tiverton High School. Where some changes were made is that we had a special ed teacher possibly like in a history or a science class. And right now our special ed teacher is doing more consultation than being in the classroom at that time. But again, an IEP does not have services in science or social studies. Right. Reading or writing could impact that, but there is not a direct service for that. So the special ed teachers are doing more of a consultation or doing some accommodations to the tests or activities. So that's how we, use the capacity there at the high school. The teacher assistants actually, the number of students, most of those teacher assistants came from Tiverton High School too, but there were a number of students in our alternate assessment class that turned 18 or 22 and left the high school. So we require that level of service for those students. Now they're being serviced elsewhere.
Okay, good. I mean, not that we have the money to bring them back. I just wanted to have that
so
conversation.
Do we feel one less teacher? Sure, we feel it, but students' IEPs are being met. That we have to make sure that's happening.
And I know you do.
And our special ed teachers at the high school are, working a little bit harder. I'm sure they'll be the first to tell you. And I see that firsthand as well as Mr. Ashley. But yes.
Okay.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay. So I echo Deb's sentiments about how helpful this is actually to hear year after, or every year, not year after year, every year. So just back to something you mentioned about OT and PT, and we were not able to bill because those were not in-person services, or they were sort of, we just were overwhelmed today. We can't do this. Do I have that right?
Yeah, so it wasn't a direct service. So the OT or the PT may not have been working with the child directly if the parents felt like that was just too much. So instead, they were just providing activities to families to do at home when they could.
So there's been a lot of ability to do telehealth. Is there an analogous?
Yes, definitely. We offered that, and a lot of families took advantage of that and were able to do that within their school day. It was, we saw that happening with families that just had a lot of service. So not just a regular classroom, they had special education service, they had speech service, they may have had some time with the interventionist, and then they had PE or library. So it was just a lot for families to manage with maybe 2 or 3 kids in their home to get everybody on the computer to do that. So those are just a couple of the ways that families had asked, is there a way that we can accommodate their busy schedule?
Right. No, I completely understand that. I sort of suffer from some of that myself, and I'm not getting OT from anybody. But but that still actually came at the cost of the district, though, because that person was still kind of employed, or, you know, we had sort of bought that time.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Yeah. Still creating and planning the activities for the child.
right. So, okay. Yet another way the pandemic continues to give or take financially. Okay. So I'm going to open the floor to any of our administrators or others on the on Zoom who would have questions. You all look remarkably content.
Dr. Larkin, I'd like to, in closing then, if no one else is going to say, commend Sarah Krager for her vision and leadership. That middle school program truly was the genesis of her idea. She continues to look at the needs of all the students in Tiverton and try to provide the best educational experience. She's a pleasure to work with, and I know I speak for the entire administrative team when I say that.
Great. And yes, again, thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Sanquioni.
Any last call for the public, Ms. Delcourt, anything?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin, no.
Okay, thank you. All right, so again, Sarah, thank you for speaking with us and giving us so much great detail of all the great work you are doing.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure.
Okay, so I think then we are up to item 5, technology.
Are we going back to policy, or you want to just keep going?
I was going to finish out 5 unless there's an objection. So hearing none, I'll move to item 5A, technology. Mr. Carnevale.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Good evening. I'm going to share out my presentation for you. I don't have as pretty of pictures that Sarah brought through, or what we got from Shannon either. So I'm just going to go into the technology budget for the 21-22 school year. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Look at that. I love it. All right, there we go. Okay. So the technology related hardware section of UCOA 57309, the total budget amount that you'll see in your budget book is $123,800. Of that, $119,712 is for the 3-year lease program that we have going on with the one-to-one Chromebook initiative that we had put forth back at the beginning of last year. And of that, the leftover amount, that $4,088, is any additional purchases for hardware if something breaks down, repairs and supplies. So you can see from last year's budget that was significantly cut back to pretty much a bare minimum that we could really run within the department. The software overview, which is another big part of the technology budget there, you can see some of the bigger item numbers, or and I broke these down by some of the UCOA codes that you'll see there, where we have virtual high school, which is classes that may not be offered at our high school that we allow the students to take, which would be an online program for them. We have that web-based supplemental instructional programs. You'll see that that's at 110,000, but some of that is also funded through IDEA, which is really nice there. The other technical software is at 63,000. Our assessment testings that are web-based are at that 7,500. Some web-based software and technology softwares that you'll see there, 11,000 and 100,000. But the next slide kind of goes into one of those specific codes, the higher end, that 57311, a little bit further. But this is the different leases, dues, memberships, and subscriptions. So you'll see in your book 54602, which is printer leases. And that's at that 42,000. So that's all of the copy machines, the printers that we have. That's the lease payments that we have on those. You'll see our internet access. That's the internet access at all 5 of the buildings. And that's budgeted at 9,000, but you'll see something that says E-ratable. So every year, the technology department, we file for E-rate, and we can E-rate the internet price where it gets subsided and that 9,000 is what we budget for, but we can get a discounted amount where we get a little bit of a payment that goes towards that. So that kind of helps us there. But now at that 57311, that software line item, I just wanted to go a little bit further in there, just so you can kind of understand why it is the number that it's at. So for our Microsoft licenses and our Google licenses, that's at about $20,000. Now those Microsoft licenses are for all of our machines, our servers. It's all of the non-Chromebook type software that we run on the computers. And then the Google license is for our enterprise license. That's our email, our classroom, and the Google Meet tools that we were using this year. One of the other line items you'll see there at that 23,000 is our virus protection, our classroom monitor, and content filter. So that's a specific line item that, of course, we use the classroom monitor and content filter to kind of watch over the students, make sure that they're on task and they're not going to sites they're not supposed to, as well as the virus protection, which kind of watches over the systems itself to make sure that we don't end up in any trouble. You'll see accounting and our HR systems at about that 17,000. Our school website and our family communication system is at about 18,000. Now that communication system is the way that we send messaging home if we're canceling school. That daily message that Mrs. Delcourt sends out every morning, that's part of that communication system in our website. And then our student information system, which is what holds all the data and everything that we use to submit up to RIDE, is at that 22,000. So this last slide and the last school committee meeting we had, Mrs. Farnworth had mentioned, you know, we have all this technology and how do we sustain it? So I wanted to add this slide in here to just kind of go over something. We have 1 year left on that lease payment for the Chrome devices for 1-to-1. So going into not this current school year, the next school year budget, but the 2023 budget, as long as we don't change any of the dollar amounts in there, that'll give us the ability, that lease payment amount, to cover our incoming 5th grade and our incoming 9th grade. So that'll allow the students to have the devices on hand for about 4 years. And then we can start on a sustainability program that every 4 years the student gets a new device. So they're not stuck with something that may not be working properly or is, you know, failing. So 2023 budget, we would be able to use that for the incoming 5th and the incoming 9th grade, and 2024 and beyond. If we had not touched that budget at all and kept it there, that's what we would be able to cover there for our students. So that's my presentation in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions or anything that they want me to go over a little bit further? I know it was kind of brief, but as we're all aware, we did cut down to pretty much the bare minimums there in tech.
Okay, I'm going to open up the floor to questions. Mrs. Farnworth, you had your hand up. Go right ahead.
Thank you. David, can you back up, please? We'll start with the first page real quick. So the tech hardware, that one I understand actually, and I don't have any question on, thank you.
No problem, thank you.
On the software, for other tech software for 63,000, you've already blown through that this year, if that's the one I'm thinking of. Is that partially funded through any IDEA funds or any other type of outside funding?
Most of the IDEA funding comes under that 53222, which is the supplemental instructional programs. Mm-hmm. There are some cases where maybe one of the licenses that we would purchase outside of that 222 number that does fall under the 502. We have seen that happen with like a program called Extra Math, which has been done, or through IDEA as well. So some of that does get subsided. It's more typical under that 53222 that we would see IDEA, but we have seen it happen in that 502 as well.
So it says on our budget information that 53502 includes the Microsoft license, and I thought I saw that on another line in your presentation, that you had Microsoft and Google in one. But be that as it may, this 63,000 is really a lot less than the actual. So I'm trying to understand, what's the thinking behind the 63,000, and what is it that we're truly spending on this line item?
So what I did is I basically took the numbers, because the softwares fall under, as you see, the different numbers that we have here. So the UCOA codes, they kind of throw us all over the place. So some of the technical softwares and some of the web-based softwares, the technical softwares could be potentially hard software that's loaded on a machine. For example, if we put an application on an iPad or something like that, that would fall under the technical softwares, where the web-based stuff is licenses for logging in. And then, of course, the technology software is anything that helps keep the district running for the virus protection, the server licensing, the programs that we use to push out software to the different machines. So that falls under the technology thing. But like I said, the other technical softwares, I mean, they could line up under 53222 as well into that number there. But like I said, with the UCOA, it kind of moves us around in different places.
Okay.
May I say something to that effect? So, Mrs. Farnworth, I can certainly take a look at the 53502 and the 57311, because on the budget information you have, you'll notice that the 57311 is very, very under budget with I don't believe there's a whole lot more purchasing that's going to be going on for the rest of the year. So it is possible that that's a function of a reclass as well. I can certainly look at that and get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David, just how's the lease program going for the copiers?
Actually, fairly well. I believe that we have another year left on a couple of our newer systems that we recently purchased. So those actually may be dying out fairly quickly as well. So that 42,000 number, and I believe when you look at what's actually spent, it's pretty close to falling under budget there, but not by much. But I do believe that we're running on one of those leases. I think we have one more year left on a couple of the higher number ones for those copy machines.
Okay. And lastly, Zoom. Do we have our own license?
Not for Zoom, no.
So I was listening to the town council meeting the other night, and the town council has an estimate, and I can't remember how much it was, but it was definitely of concern that it was going to be a large dollar amount for this next fiscal year for them. Yes. So right now it's free, but that will be ending. Is that something you're aware of?
Yes.
And do you know how much it would be?
So we, as the school district, we're actually more of a Google-based school. So we use Google Meet, and it falls under that Microsoft Google licenses, where our meetings are all done through Meet. The one thing that's happening with Google is that they're updating their Meet system constantly to try to get it on par or better than what the Zoom program is. So we would eventually be able to move over to Google Meet if we needed to for school committee meetings or something like that. But as the classrooms and everything, we do all of our classroom teaching through Google Meet, and that's all under our Google licenses that we have. With Zoom, one of the reasons why we did choose to go with Google was the price difference was dramatic. I believe Zoom is 2 to 3 times more expensive, but that's their priority, or that program is only for virtual meetings. It's not for meetings, classrooms, email, document holding, spreadsheet creation. So where with the Google program, we have a lot more that lumps into that as well. So that's kind of one of the reasoning why we did decide to go with Google. for our video programming, for our meeting type thing. In regards to Zoom, yes, once we hit the end of the school year, so June 30th, Zoom is technically free for an unlimited amount of time for any schools. But once June 30th hits, you only get a 40-minute window if you were to choose to use Zoom, and then you'd have to restart your meeting. And that's the basic version, the free version that you get there.
And of course, our goal is to go back to meeting in person at some point.
Yes, it is. And hopefully we don't have to do these meetings like this forever.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So Dave, other than school committee meetings, do we have substantial Zoom use then?
We recommend to all the staff, the teaching staff, that they use Google Meet for the classroom. And that's been pretty much the standard. We use Zoom every so often for larger meetings. And the reason why we do that is you have right now a little bit more control, whereas being the host, you can mute everyone all at once, where with the Google Meet program, currently you can't, but with the upgrades that have been coming out every month, they've been putting out more and more features to allow for that to happen, for better handling of larger meetings. So with any hope by May, June, they'll be up to par with the way that Zoom runs, and it'd be really seamless, or no difference.
So when it's June 30th, 2021, that Zoom moves from being free to school districts to a cost to school districts, or 40 minutes free, and then you're...
Yeah, you get 40 minutes for your meeting. So when your meeting hits 40 minutes, it tells you, warning, your meeting is at 40 minutes, it's shutting down, and then you can restart another one. So that's how Zoom normally worked in the past. They turned that off back in March of 2020, and they kept it and continued that for anybody that's a school district.
That it could be an indefinite meeting?
Yes, that is correct.
For free?
Correct.
And what would, supposing we decided we needed Zoom, what would a license cost?
So as of right now, with Zoom itself, I've reached out to try to see what we could get as a single license for the district, and we're looking a little over $1,000, and that's kind of crazy for all their features. I'm trying to see what we can do if there is a possibility to have a single license for the district, so that we could go forward with it. We do use, before the pandemic happened, we use GoToMeeting, which is another program out there. GoToMeeting is a lot less expensive. It's about $350 a year, but that's more of a webinar type tool than a tool that we're currently using here. If that's something that we could switch to and be around that same price, we would probably go that route, just to have that license for an emergency use.
So the license would be $1,000. Did you think that was crazy expensive or crazy cheap?
Expensive. I feel that's a little expensive for a single license.
Okay. All right. And that would be indefinite use.
Correct.
Definite. That'd be sort of open-ended use for the district for whatever it needed to use it for a year.
Just one account, one license.
So you can only have one meeting at a time.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. Just more curious than I have strong opinions about any of this. So, okay, thank you.
And like I've said in the past, and I've talked to a lot of the teachers about it, because when everything went back in March, we all went over and started using Zoom because of the fact that they let it go unlimited,
right,
and everything like that. And then what ended up happening is over the summer, Zoom ended up getting hit with a lawsuit due to, like everybody was talking about, the Zoom bombing. So to have a Zoom account, you have to now be 13 years or older, which made it very difficult at the elementary level, getting student accounts through Zoom, because now they're required that you be 13 or older to have one. So that was one of the other reasons why we kind of pushed a little bit more towards Google for the security purposes, because it's a lot more difficult to get into a Google Meet than it was to get into a Zoom. Now Zoom got a lot better with their securities.
So each person would need an account, or just the district would need an account or a license?
So if we had to go into another school year of a pandemic that we're in currently and have to do distance learning or something.
Oh, bite your tongue.
I am. I'm sorry. It would require that I have a license for every staff member that is to use it, but not every student.
And that would be $1,000?
No, once you start getting into the group rate, we're looking probably about like 17,000.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, and as you can see, Microsoft licenses and Google licenses combined is 20, and Microsoft is about 80% of that.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess everybody now knows that I go to Zoom meetings. I don't necessarily understand how they work. All right. Mrs. Pavo, questions, observations?
I have nothing.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Dakotas?
Well, thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Dakotas.
And Mrs. Palish?
Dave, are any of these are all, I mean, I guess you wouldn't have them here if they weren't, but we pay like accounting system, we pay $17,000 a year for what? Administration of it?
So we are switching over to eFinance Plus.
I thought we already bought that.
We did, yes, and that's the yearly to host it onto their servers. That's part of the training. That's also includes School Spring. That also includes Frontline, which is our absent management program. School Spring is the program that we use to post job postings and everything. So the accounting, the HR systems, that's all lumped in there. So that's our accounting software, as well as the hiring software, our absent management software, our PD software, all part of anything that has to do with payroll and HR.
Okay. And bless your heart if you can use Google Meet, because we tried it at work and it didn't work. I mean, not being able to mute people in the room. I mean, bless the elementary teachers' hearts that they can't mute their children, because it didn't work in our work environment. So I'm happy to hear that it's working better in this environment.
Yeah, it's nice because, like I say, every month they've put out something new. And the most recent thing that they did do, which is helpful, it's not quite there yet, is once you hit 6 people in the room, everybody that comes in after the 6th person, they're automatically muted, and it tells you that you've been muted. So it does help a little bit, especially on our, when we do a distance learning snow day or something, that when they have the whole class in there, that the first 6 people come in and they're all chatting, but once you hit that number, they're all muted after that. So it does make it a little easier to stop clicking mute on people. But again, every time.
That's only on a as needed basis when we have snow days.
That's correct, yes.
Going after. Okay. Otherwise, I think same way. And I was having a little bit of a problem buying this into the UCOA budget, but let me spend a little bit more time with that, and I can certainly shoot Amy a question if I continue to have issues.
Okay, thank you. I know the UCOA numbers are kind of, it's messy a little bit when you get to the software part. There's so many different categories.
Okay, great. Ms. Delcourt, any questions from the public?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin.
Okay, thank you. And any questions from any of our administrators? Okay. Again, thanks very much, Dave, for all your work and great presentation. All right. So next we are moving up to the next item under 5A, which is transportation. Lucky you, Ms. Roderick.
Thank you. Everyone's favorite subject, transportation.
You can hear the teeth grinding.
Right. Along with the brakes of the buses. So here, this is a very similar slide, almost identical to last year. But I did add in the object codes. I believe that was at Mrs. Palish's request from last year. So this year, coming up in FY22, the first thing I'm sure you've noticed about the budget is that the statewide transportation has more than doubled. And that is basically a pass-through from the state to us for our out-of-district placement transportation needs. And actually, Sarah and I will be speaking with First Student to potentially, I don't want to say bring it in-house, but we will work directly with First Student to transport the students without RIDE being the middleman. So hopefully that will save us some money. Right now, we don't know if or how much, but we actually have a meeting this week to address that, not only for 22, but also for the current year. And I know that the transportation contract was long and negotiation process was long, drawn out, hard fought. And the increase this year is limited to 1.75%. There is a clause for an increase in any given year. It is the greater of 1.75% or the average CPI for the preceding year. And in calendar 20, the consumer price index was only 1.4%. So I have increased our transportation budget by 1.75%. Across the board in all areas. There is a little bit more of a cushion that I added into the elementary and secondary regular education transportation. Transportation can vary wildly sometimes. And again, I know that the COVID-19 has made things different than they used to be, but if we get back to normal, potentially, and if athletics get back to normal, we can certainly have the budget in there for them. So there's a little bit of a cushion in there of about 70,000. Other than that, there isn't much new and different about the transportation budget for next year. So this is probably the quickest presentation in history, but I didn't know if anyone has any questions at this point.
Okay, thank you. I'll open the floor to questions. Mrs. Pavo?
Questions, Dr. Larkin?
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Palish?
Just a quick one, Amy. And I know it's repetitive, but so the statewide transportation out of district for special, make sure that we point out it's different than that 5111 spend.
That's correct. The special education that you see in the 55111 there is for students. Actually, I typed in there Bradley. That's potentially for the kids in the Bradley program at the middle school. I just sort of typed it in there. But those are, Sarah, please correct me if I'm wrong, but if I recall correctly, that is for students who within the district who have special transportation needs in their IEP. Is that correct, Sarah?
That's correct. And in district are students who may attend Bradley Portsmouth.
Okay.
And any of the specialized programs that may be in Middletown or Little Compton. Out of the 55110 are students who are out of sort of the Island and Tiverton area. So students going to, students going to schools in Providence or Pawtucket.
Thank you. I just wanted to point that out because I know when people think, oh, out of district, isn't that the sped line? So I just, that was helpful to explain the difference. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Dakotas?
No, thank you.
And Mrs. Farnworth?
Amy, I apologize, but I'm still stuck on this statewide transportation.
Okay.
That is just popping up this year for the first time.
That is correct.
Why is that? And how did we pay for these services prior to this year?
I'm going to ask Sarah for some help on the specifics on this one, if that's okay.
Sure. The statewide transportation, we actually kept under the regional budget, but the towns did pay for that. It was not a shared service. So you were not paying for students from Middletown or Little Compton who went to out-of-district placements, and Middletown was not paying for Tiverton students. And because of that, we really felt like it should go on each of the individual budgets rather than the regional budget, because it wasn't a shared service. It was an individual service. So that's why it's coming up there.
So what line item would it have been charged to in previous years?
If I understand Sarah correctly, it would be part of the regional assessment. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so I believe in 2019 we had, the regional assessment was 1.9 million. Last year was 1.6 million and change, 1.7.
So part of this decrease we saw was because
Right.
that money got moved over here.
Exactly.
Correct.
But that was
Well, it would have been, yeah, it all comes out of the same, because that just would have been at some of the deductions. It's just showing up right now as another line item.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it sticks out like a sore thumb here, where it may have been part of a bigger number elsewhere.
Exactly.
This is more, this is where it should be, yeah.
Okay. And Amy, bus assistants and monitors, and I think it's important for us to remember this with this latest contract. We more than doubled our budget. Well, no, I take that back. We didn't more than double it. FY20 is a little bit off, but you know, we went from averaging 300,000 a year to 500, and looks like 34,000 for next year. And I know that the issue has come up with us before. Do we have any flexibility to perhaps the number of bus monitors where we have, especially with the middle school?
I believe, my understanding, and I might ask Dr. Sanchioni to verify this for me, I believe they are state mandated through 8th grade, I believe. Bus monitors are required.
That is correct, right? We looked at that last year when we were going through our budget and making the reductions, so they are required.
Through 8th grade?
No, my understanding is through 5th.
But because our 5th graders are on the bus with the 8th graders, that they have to be there.
Yes, but can't you ask for a waiver for that?
Not, we did ask for a waiver last year and were denied.
And they said no?
Because of 5th grade.
Okay. I just think it's important for us to remember that cost is contributing to this overall huge jump in transportation.
In addition, Mrs. Farnworth, so the current contract with First Student also specifies a 4-hour minimum for the bus monitors where they did not previously. So that adds to the increase as well.
And it makes all the sense to keep them on the middle school bus then. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the public, Ms. Delcourt?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin.
And any questions from the administrators?
My only comment, I guess, Dr. Larkin, would be, I know they told us no yesterday, or last year, but I'm wondering if we don't request the waiver again and let them deny it so that we can prove that we've done everything we possibly could.
I tend to agree. I sort of had thought about that as well. You know, and I think ultimately there has to be a legislative remedy for this issue, because it's hard not to think that there's some collusion going on.
Well, I just, like I said, I certainly remember East Greenwich, another community. I remember them getting, asking for the waiver. I don't remember it being denied, but it's, you know, if we have to ask and be denied, then I just think we should do that. And it shows, you know, we at least tried. Unless, Dr. Sanquioni, you would not be in favor of waiving monitors on a middle school bus. That's a different conversation.
No, that's not it. Certainly, the cost benefit for us. The problem also was, you may recall, that they're guaranteed, I believe it was 3.5 hours. And so,
so if they're going to be working anyway, might as well have them on a bus.
they're going to do they're going to do the elementary, middle school run no matter, they're going to get paid for it no matter what.
Yeah, I think I remember Amy saying that now that you say that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to close out 5A unless there's other questions or concerns. So we're moving back to item 4A under policy development, revision and review. Policy number 1190, Title IX, sexual harassment. This is the second reading. So I'll ask for a motion to approve to open the discussion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so the motion's been made and seconded. I'm going to open the floor to discussion. Mr. Dakotas?
No, I'm here to listen on this one. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Pavo?
I have no questions.
Okay. And Mrs. Farnworth?
I just want to thank Dr. Secchione for making the change that I had suggested last time around to add the sexual harassment to the title. That way the reader knows exactly what they're about to read.
Okay. And Mrs. Palish?
Nope, all set.
Any questions from any of our administrators? And any questions from the public?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin.
Okay, so I will ask for a vote. Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mrs. Palish?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. So again, thanks to the policy subcommittee and Dr. Sanquioni for drafting this. Moving to item 4B, 2020-2021 Employee Handbook. Second reading, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Open discussion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I'm going to open the floor to questions. Mrs. Farnworth?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mrs. Palish?
All set.
Mr. Dakotas?
I'm good.
Mrs. Pavo?
I'm all set. Thank you.
And any questions from the public, Mrs. Delcourt?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin.
And any questions from our administrators? Okay, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mrs. Palish? You're muted. I can see you muted.
Are we on me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I shut my door. Yes.
Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
And Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So again, thanks to our policy subcommittee and Dr. Sanquioni. So now that we've talked about that, let's go talk about money again. So item 5B, FY21 budget update. I'm not sure who wants to talk first, Ms. Roderick or Dr. Sanquioni?
I'm going to turn it to Miss Roderick here. We reviewed these documents with the finance subcommittee, I believe, last week, and we are for the full committee tonight. So, Miss Roderick.
So the one of the documents in the packet is the December year-to-date that shows where we stand compared to the annual FY21 budget, as well as a comparison to the same point in time last year. I'm not going to go over every detail, but the point I'd like to make is that we are spending pretty much on track. Similarly to last year, at this point, we had spent 38%, a little over 38% of the budget. And this year, we're at 37.8%. But it is important to know that we, at the time I prepared this report, we still had not received the November and December transportation bills. So that that expenditure total of 12.6 million would have been considerably higher. But nonetheless, that still leaves us, we're spending conservatively in terms of, unless something is absolutely necessary or is, due to public safety or student safety, we are being very judicious. And I think in the beginning, someone called me the Queen of No, and I think now I've earned that title. We do spend in what is the best interest of the students. Also, it's important to note that right in this budget includes, which I'll be getting to in a different slide in just a minute, this budget does include what we have spent on COVID mitigation that was not funded by the state or federal government. So that's approximately $200,000, just under $200,000 in expenses that we're still hoping will come through before the end of the year in this latest stimulus package. The latest stimulus package is estimated to be about 4 times the original stimulus package. We are hopefully expecting 4 times the amount of money, which the last time we got about 233,000. And so hopefully if we got even 3 times that, that would just be very, very helpful. Based on my weekly meetings with RIASBO, we haven't heard, there have been no details on any restrictions, how the money has to be spent, that sort of thing. I believe the U.S. Department of Education and RIDE are still figuring out all those details. So we're still sitting in limbo in that regard. At this point, does anyone have any questions about the budget report itself? I'm happy to answer.
Okay. I'll open the floor to questions from the committee. Mrs. Pavo?
Not right now, Dr. Larkin.
Mr. Dakotas?
I just want to say, Amy, that I pray on it in church every Sunday, so we're going to get 4 times. So don't think we're getting 3 times. We're getting 4. I've been praying.
Okay, all right.
I even like the little candles.
Like Captain Picard says, make it so.
Mrs. Palish?
So Amy, I know I see some overspend. So in your opinion, it's kind of early because it's only December, but right now we're going to be on track to dip into the general fund at the amount we anticipated and not beyond that. Not the general fund, the balance. I wish we could dip into the general fund.
Careful with those words.
Okay. Or do you think this 193 potentially might have to dip a little bit?
There's the potential. Again, it all depends on the timing. And at 193 is already spent. Like we had to install the plexiglass, all the continued cleaning supply. You folks know the drill. It is a potential issue. I don't want to sugarcoat it, but it is already in the spending. Correct. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, we have, a ways to go. As far as you're hoping that there'll be shortages or in other areas potentially could. We're hoping, but you don't. We're being crystal. Right. Super careful about any unnecessary spending. Not that that anything. Don't have a crystal ball. So it was unnecessary, but we're being even more judicious in how we spend every penny. Okay, thank you. That was all.
Okay, and Mrs. Farmer.
Just a couple of questions. First is on utilities. So I can see where
county net?
Sorry, I'm looking at fuel oil first, 56209. Just to, state the obvious that through December 31st, the fuel oil would be expected to be only a small percentage of the annual allotment as we head into the winter months. So I don't really have a lot there. Electricity, we're at close to 40%. So here's the question, and I'm not sure if I brought this up in this arena recently or not. The solar agreement we entered into about a year ago. From what I'm hearing, we haven't yet realized any of the benefits of that agreement.
That's correct. Based on, I'm not sure if you brought it up here or in the finance subcommittee meeting, I can't recall where. I did reach out to Kearsarge Energy, and they are still roughly a year away from us seeing any benefit to that.
Yeah, we talked about it at the last meeting.
Was it?
Not even finished with construction, is that right?
Yes, they are not finished with construction. They, I guess, are. I wasn't here when the contract was signed, so I'm not 100% familiar with how it was structured. However, I guess there's a facility that they're building in West Warwick, and between, I guess there were some permitting delays, and then there were some COVID delays, among other things. I don't know if the COVID delays were legitimate or if it was just, a convenient reason for them to be able to use. I legitimately don't know one way or the other, but they are behind schedule. And the last communication I got from them said that they, should be online roughly a year from now, or, in the earliest late fall of 21.
I don't think the contract contained any mention whatsoever when they thought they would actually be up and running. I'm maybe misremembering that, but they had an inherent motivation to get it going. So, and I don't think they would delay it for reasons other than they actually had real reasons to be delayed. Permitting generally is usually the worst part of it.
No, because as I recall, it was, we had to hurry up and sign up because they were going to get this built immediately and we were going to.
Yeah.
I think it was more that they were going to get other contracts signed with other people. I don't think they were.
No, I remember differently, but fine.
Well, yes.
Neither here nor there.
Yeah, I know. I have these kind of debates with my kids all the time, so why bother? Okay.
Are you saying I'm like one of your kids, Dr. Larkin?
No, I'm saying that sort of, we can't agree what was said when it was said. So.
And the best laid plans sometimes don't work. Don't go on
and
schedule.
Certainly this would be the year, Elaine, that they wouldn't. I could certainly see that.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The only other question I have is on, for now at least, line 56401 for textbooks. We have zero budgeted in the line item, and you've spent 30,000 plus this year. Are you anticipating to be able to take that from somewhere else?
I am, specifically where I haven't researched that, but these were some advanced placement. I believe the advanced placement, social studies, and some other, actually they related to the courses that were presented to us a few meetings back. I'm trying to remember what the other one.
Computer science.
I'm sorry?
Computer science.
Computer science. So those were textbooks related to those classes, which were new. And my understanding is that at the time that we were developing the budget, these were not in play, but they did need them for the students. So I do have plans to take them from somewhere else. I just haven't identified that yet.
That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from the public, Mrs. Delcourt?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin.
And any questions for our administrators? I don't know if there is more to be covered under this topic, Dr. Sanchioni, or was that it?
There's a second part of it. Ms. Rogers, did you go through all the CARES document?
I did not. In your packet, this was also discussed with the finance subcommittee in terms of in terms of our COVID expenditures. Our COVID expenditures to date are just over 400 and something thousand dollars, 401,000 and change. And we're estimating through the end of the year an additional 35,000, which consists mainly of PPE, gloves, disinfectant, cleaning supplies, those sorts of things. No major purchases like the plexiglass shields that we put up, but certainly the masks that are used by the nurses and in the classrooms with the intensive special needs students, that they have to be changed every time they deal with a different student. So, you know, we're expecting a total of between 430 and 440,000, of which we've already received the 233,000 of the CARES funds, the stimulus money, which leaves that 190 something thousand that I mentioned that was already expended in the December budget report that we have to cover. And again, we're, I guess I need to go to Mr. Dakotas's house of worship in order to make the prayers double so that we get this stimulus money, because it's a huge impact. And, you know, up until this point, there have been silence until Congress passed the package, and now they're hammering out the details. Presumably, the thought is that on the one hand, the U.S. Department of Education and potentially RIDE on the one hand are sort of ironing out the wrinkles that came up with the first round of funding. And I don't know if I would actually call it making it more equitable, but definitely smoothing out the bumps that occurred with the first round. However, in addition, the word on the street in terms of people's expectations, in particular the business managers on my RIASBO calls, is that they potentially, the state of Rhode Island, among many other states, could take that money and use it to supplant their shortfalls, and then use that to sort of fill our state aid potentially. And so it may not necessarily be gravy, you know, it may not necessarily be extra funds. Although I would hope that I would hope that it, you know, even if there's some of that, that there would also be extra, because every school district in the state, and I also know in, you know, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, have expended, you know, for us, it's 400 and something thousand plus. However, you know, in some of the bigger cities and so forth, it's in the millions that are uncovered, unfunded, but they needed to do it in order to comply with RIDA regulations, the CDC, bring the kids back into school, that sort of thing. So we're hoping that it comes in whatever form. You know, we will certainly take advantage of those funds in whatever form. And if it comes down to where they have supplanted state aid or something else, I guess that's better than nothing. But we're certainly hoping it's really on the other side of where at least a good portion of it is additional funds to cover these additional unanticipated costs, which not necessarily the plexiglass, but the you know, the PPE and masks and gloves and so forth, I would imagine would be expected to continue into 22 at some point. Although, Dr. Larkin, I'm sure you probably have a better idea as to how long we'll have to sort of be wearing this protective equipment and supplies, but I would imagine it's for the foreseeable future. So with that,
I imagine it's for the foreseeable future too. Yes.
Okay.
So I have one question then about that in particular. So there are, I understand sort of the plexiglass and the gloves and other stuff. Is there a way of accounting? I mean, we've probably had some absenteeism, not absenteeism. We've had some teachers who've had to quarantine or have been sick. And so that's been an expense in terms of substitutes. And we've probably had other curricular things that have also been expended. Is that accounted for in the 431,000, I think it was, of the COVID expenses?
So as far as that 200 so we sort of have
so I think it was 436,000 total. We got 243 or so. 243 and other things. So 193, sort of shortfall. But I'm sort of imagining other unfunded, unbudgeted COVID expenses beyond just cleaning and plexiglass and gloves and PPE.
So we've had, so for example, in those COVID expenses, as just a small example, are the hotspots for the families that don't have internet. So that's included in that. There are some educational platforms that are included in that. And that, forgive me, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I believe there's a good portion, almost 30,000, related to Ms. Donnelly Roach. Correct me if is it Wit and Wisdom? I can't quite remember what the program is, but
some of our online digital resources that the teachers have been using, Wit and Wisdom and Eureka Math, as well as Amplify, all have resources that we've been maximizing our use of for our distance learners.
And also, Dr. Larkin, to answer your question as far as substitutes go, the substitutes at present are not included in that amount. RIDE has issued a series of grants to offset the cost of substitutes. And we have gotten I wouldn't say nominal amount, but approximately 33,000, and we've asked for a second round of about 50,000 to assist with covering the cost of those substitutes. So what I was going to say earlier was that there's sort of like two tranches. That substitutes are being handled a little bit differently, although I certainly could, whip up a quick worksheet that shows you what those costs are, because that's not only the building subs that we have. Dr. Sanchioni and the principals can talk more to this. We have building subs. So that sub, may substitute for one teacher one day at a particular school and then another teacher at the same school on a different day. But we also have, in particular at the high school, we have some teachers and some teaching assistants who are covering for certain other classes if certain teachers are unable to come in or are quarantined or are teaching virtually, that sort of thing. So that falls under classroom coverage. So that's also another factor that falls under the substitute. So I can certainly get you a figure on that. I don't have it handy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we need to sort of add up everything so that we know exactly what are the, again, unfunded, unbudgeted costs that we're incurring. And I guess I can't help but point out that it would have been so much worse if we had not done the HVAC at the middle school and the high school. And that's a credit to Tiverton, to the people that voted in favor of the bonds, and we are getting, or the town is getting money from that back. So we really can't say that enough. Or obviously I can't say that enough because I seem to say it every meeting, but I'll continue to do it. So any other questions from the committee? And administrators, public?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin.
Okay, so a content and satisfied group you all are. All right, I need to get back to my agenda.
Either that or I love them to sleep with numbers, Dr. Larkin, one of the two.
Well, that is a form of contentment, is to go to sleep with numbers. You can ask any math whiz. All right. So we are up to item 7, announcements, scheduled meetings, reports. We have a policy subcommittee meeting on February 8th, meeting of this committee on February 9th and the 23rd. I need to hear from the committee if they're available on February 2nd at 7 to continue our remote meeting with Attorney Scungio that we started a couple weeks ago. I'll ask you each individually. Diane, is that okay with you? The 2nd, it's next Tuesday at 7.
Oh, let me check my busy social schedule. Sure.
Okay. Elaine, can you make?
I am not available on the 2nd, Dr. Larkin.
Okay. Is there a better day that week that you could do, Elaine?
Yes, it's just the 2nd. I won't be available. I'm having some surgery that day, and I will be home. Just not sure. If I'm just going to sit and listen, it may be okay. So, if everybody is good with the 2nd, I'll try to be here.
Okay. Well,
Any flexibility to go back to the 1st
or the 3rd.
or the 3rd?
Yeah.
I mean, that's fine. 3rd is fine with me. It's just that one day.
All right. Let's hear from others. Peter, is the 1st okay with you?
Yep. Yes, it is.
Deb? Deb, you're muted.
Are we on the 2nd or the 3rd?
I think we were talking about the 1st, actually.
Oh, now we're on the 1st? At
7?
yeah, that works.
Okay. Mike?
Yes, that's fine.
All right. So Peter, if you could check with Ben and see if the 1st is okay with him. If we go to the 2nd anyway, Deb and Mike, is the 2nd okay with you?
Yes, for me.
All right.
Yeah, I prefer the 2nd, but I want Elaine to be there. So whatever we need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So why don't we see if Ben can make the 1st, and then maybe Elaine, we can touch base and see how you feel about the 2nd.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep, that's fine.
Okay. All right. And then if not, I agree with Mike. I think it's important for all of us to be able to attend in full. Okay. Any other?
Is our meeting on the 9th? What time are we starting?
So I'm going to have to say that 7 o'clock is probably going to need to be the standing time for me.
Okay, let's do that then.
Work obligations are just getting a little out of hand. So, so I think we should expect for 7.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Larkin, this is Mr. Cabral. I do have one announcement I want to make sure the committee is aware of.
Sure.
This afternoon, there was a bus accident, a PM bus accident. Bus 18 was involved in an accident on Crandall Road. A car coming out of Narrow Ave slid into the bus. No one was injured. The fire and police were both responded to the accident. The bus was brought back to the school. There was 9 students that were still on the bus. No one was injured. Parents picked up the students at Ranger, and everything's okay. I was just wanted to make sure the committee was aware that we did have a bus accident this afternoon.
Thank you, Manny.
Thanks. Yeah, and thanks for your attention to that, Manny. I'm sure you were calm in a crisis.
we dealt with it.
All right. So I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn unless there's any other issues.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Any objections?